Congress, and he represents, of course, one of the great states where freedom is still free, the state of Florida. Joining us right now, Congressman Greg Steube. Congressman, good to have you on.
Yeah, thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
You have so much going on, but I want to jump into something that's important. You have some legislation out there to abolish USAID. I think a lot of people now realize what a disaster that agency was. Give us an update on the progress of Congress backing up the president and getting legislation to, well, eliminate the troubled agency.
Yeah, thanks so much for President Trump and Elon and Doge for going in and just highlighting. I mean, it makes it a lot easier for me to do my job. I've filed bills like this for years to get us out of the UN, to get us out of all these different things, this waste, fraud, and abuse in USAID. But it's hard to do it because even Republicans will be like, well, we don't, we want to still support humanitarian aid across the country. But when Doge highlights these examples, it's hard to say no to cutting $1.5 million to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in Serbia, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, USAID funding in Ukraine that was spent on models and designers to go to New York City, $9 million in funding in Syria that ended up in the hands of terrorists. I mean, I could go on and on and on. $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru, $2.5 million to build electric cars in Vietnam. So because of the work of Doge to really go into the databases and pull this information out, it highlights how corrupt this stuff is. Joni Ernst has been able to find out that in some of these grants, the grantees were skimming money off the top. So let's say it was $1 million grant for, transgender whatever in Guatemala. The people that were the grantees, those not-for-profits, those GAO type, funding things, they were taking 10, 20, 30% off the top for themselves. I mean, just a slush fund of horrible progressive policy initiatives, and it needs to go away. And the USAID was created, I think, by Kennedy by executive order. So it can be abolished by executive order, but you have the Democrats freaking out saying, oh, this requires legislation. Okay, well, let's file legislation and move it through the process, which is a good thing. And I'm glad that that's part of the things that we are doing, because future administrations won't be able to bring it back without congressional authorization to do so. So I don't see how we can't pass this in the House. And I don't see how, quite frankly, we can't pass it in the Senate with a Republican majority in both chambers. It is very simple. It just does away with the agency. And all of these, lawsuits against Trump for the things that he's doing, get rid of these people, would all go away when Congress passes a bill that says the agency shouldn't exist anymore.
Yeah, that's going to be a big moment. And like you said, it'll make it much harder for a future president to try to bring it back to the good old days of corruption and waste and fraud and abuse. You rattled off, I think, the most brilliant examples all in a row, and they're compelling. If we were going to make an SNL comedy, we might have actually picked those, except this stuff really happened when foreign aid is always going to be around. We're going to have a national interest in certain foreign aid. How do we make sure that when the State Department takes this over and other agencies that we fix, how do we get that accountability so that they don't get this far astray as USAID did?
Well, obviously doing away with USAID, then that solves that problem. But you're right. There's still going to be programs through the State Department. And Congress has oversight over the State Department. So having a good Foreign Affairs Committee that has oversight over the State Department is very important to that process. That is Congress's role. I also sit on the Intel Committee, and we have oversight over the CIA, FBI, NSA, and all those different intelligence agencies. And it is our job to make sure that they are stewarding the dollars that we appropriate to them in an appropriate way, which is why I'm so excited for all of these leaders like Kash Patel and some of these others that are really going to go into these agencies, cut out all the deep state actors, get the agencies back focused to what they should be focused on, like foreign threats to our country, all of these terrorists that have been let into our country and actually in the national security and defense of our country, and not going after grandmas that happen to walk into the Capitol on January 6th.
Yeah. That's exactly what Americans want. They want to get back to mission, because when the mission's followed, it's a good thing, but it's been so off mission for so long. When you look out at the FBI, obviously there'll be a moment of disruption. There'll be a moment of counteroffensive against Kash Patel. What are some things that Congress can do to make sure that the reforms at the FBI are lasting, that you have Kash Patel's back long enough for him to make the sort of lasting change that'll make the Bureau a great law enforcement agency again?
Yeah, we have to pass legislation to do away with a lot of these things, and we can do it through the budget reconciliation process. So when we go through the budget, which is thankfully using reconciliation, we only need 50 51 votes in the Senate to get it done. We don't need 60 votes to get it. These policy initiatives, you need 60 votes. But if it has a budgetary influence, you can put it in a reconciliation package and do it with just a majority of the Senate. So it's really important that as during President Trump's term, that Congress, especially that we have the House and the Senate, goes through the reconciliation process on cutting all of these horrible programs and having the leadership of those people in those agencies to tell us, hey, this needs to go away, this needs to go away, and then we can appropriate the money efficiently and not be spending the type of money we're spending. I mean, when I got elected to Congress 6 years ago, we were only $20 trillion in debt, which was a lot. We're now $36 trillion in debt. We're running $2.5 to $3.5 trillion deficits, and it's because of garbage like this that we're spending. The list goes on and on. $20 million to create Sesame Street television programming in Iraq. I mean, it's that kind of stuff that the American people don't support, has put us in the position we are where we have bloated spending, and Washington has a spending problem. We got to get that squared away. So Congress can help through the budgetary process to cut these problems. The founders of our country put us, the House, in control of the purse strings because they didn't want that to be in the executive branch so that we, the House, had power over the purse. And so by controlling how we appropriate the dollars to the executive branch, we can have real influence on the way that the executive branch operates.
Yeah, that's so important and so well thought. And I think the stuff that you are doing, Congresswoman Kat Cammack, and you have some common sense legislation called the Access Act. There's lots of things going on right now that are going to restore common sense and sort of get the insanity of bureaucracy out of the way. What, when you look at where the Senate and House are headed through with reconciliation, I think Lindsey Graham said he thinks he can get the spending blueprint just for the next year down to $6.1 trillion, which is still a big number, but that'd be a $1.2 trillion down from where Joe Biden left it. Do you think $1 trillion in a single year reduction is still attainable with all the talks going on between both sides?
I think the House would like to cut more than that. I would like to cut $2.5 trillion. I would like to put us on a path for a balanced budget. I came from Florida in the state legislature, and we had to balance our budget every single year. What a blessing it would be if the United States government had to do the same thing. So putting us back on a fiscally healthy path, I think, is very important. And this is a rare opportunity. We have a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and Donald Trump in the White House. If we are not able to balance our budget and cut significant spending in these next 2 years, then we'll never be able to do it as a country. And we'll continue to build on the debt. We'll continue to run high deficits. And at some point in the next few years, Social Security will be expending more money than it's taking in as a program. Medicare will be doing the same. And so you have these programs that we have to spend money on that are not discretionary. So if we don't take this opportunity that the American people have given us to cut spending and get us back on a fiscal sustainable path as our country, it'll never happen again. Democrats aren't going to do it. And if in the midterm elections we God forbid, lose the House, we'll never be able to do it. So these next 2 years are vital to the future of our country.
It is. It could set the course for 25 or more years of American history. That's why it's so important and why the stuff you're doing is so essential. You literally had me laughing about an hour or two ago when you put this tweet out, but I think it is a great statement about the state of the Democratic Party. You said you're sitting in the Ways and Means markup. I think about proposing a bill to make Trump derangement syndrome eligible for treatment by Medicare. Half of this committee would instantly qualify. The Democrats have seemed to double down on the very thing that Americans just told them they don't like about Democrats. Are they just in a rut right now, or do they just misread the American public?
They don't get the American people. I was in committee talking to other members because all it was Elon shouldn't have access to this information. Joe Biden appointed so many people in his administration that never got elected by anybody, never had to get confirmed by the Senate. There's a whole host of people that presidents appoint to certain positions, and that's his authority as president. But now, apparently, because it's Elon Musk, they're going to go after him, they're going to go after Doge, and they're continuing to go after President Trump. And what's fascinating is these are the exact same talking points that we heard all the way through the campaign. It was everything. It's a constitutional crisis. It's the same language, and they haven't learned. The American people don't think we're in a constitutional crisis right now. They think that President Trump's doing exactly what they put him in office to do, and they're so detached from America and the majority of Americans that they go back to their talking points of it's a constitutional crisis and Elon Musk, all this kind of stuff. And the American people are sick and tired of it because it's the same songbook that they've been singing from for really the last 6 years. And the American people just don't care that they think that's happening because they know it's not. And they know that President Trump's going to put us back on a path that our country has longed for a very, very long time. There's a much better spirit up here of America and patriotism because of having the House, the Senate, and the White House and the direction that we're going. And when I go home, you hear from people in my district how excited they are. You constantly hear from people back home like, oh my gosh, who knew that all this stuff was being spent in USAID? Get rid of it. Get rid of the Department of Education. Get rid of all of it because that's the direction that Trump has a mandate, and he won every swing state and he won the popular vote. Yet Democrats continue to attack him like he's the bad guy. It's they are detached from reality, but hey, let them keep doing their same playbook. That'll help us in the midterms in 2 years.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. You can see it, and it's real, and it may take a long reckoning before they realize how far off the course they are. But sir, it's always a great honor, the great work you do. I want to ask you one last question. There's a lot of lawmakers now deeply concerned about these judges who have taken a position in the courts that isn't a legal position. It seems to be a political position, which is the executive branch can't look at executive branch data. And some of the people are beginning to talk about Eli Crane already drafting these impeachment articles. Is there an exercise to maybe look at a few judges who've gone beyond the role of judge to political activists and maybe setting an example with a couple of impeachments, or do you think Congress doesn't have the appetite for that?
I think that would be great to send a very strong signal that Congress isn't going to put up with you politicizing the bench. I think you make an example of a couple of those people and it'll go away. But the Democrats know this is their only way to try to slow Trump down. So they are going to use the judicial branch through even filing frivolous lawsuits that they know they're not going to win. When these cases get to the United States Supreme Court, they are not going to win these cases, but it slows down what Trump is trying to do. So yeah, I would actually think that's not a bad idea for some of these bad actors who are completely politicizing the bench. And if you look at all of these, and I don't have them all in front of me, but I can guarantee you that most of these lawsuits that have been filed on all of Trump's actions are filed in courts with judges that were appointed by Democrats.
That's right. They're hitting the blue districts, no doubt.
Yeah, so there's a policy piece here, and the Democrats don't have anything else. They can't go to the House, they can't go to the Senate, and they can't go to the White House. So they're using the judicial branch, one, to slow things down, two, to spend money that the American taxpayers are going to have to fight against all of these things through the Attorney General's office. But it's just slowing what eventually Trump has the full authority to do everything that he's doing. I don't have any doubt in that at all.
Yeah, no, I think when it gets to the Supreme Court, it'll get clarified pretty quickly. But it'll probably take going up there a few times to settle this down. Congressman, as always, I love watching you work, particularly at Ways and Means, now such a powerful, important committee reshaping the government and reshaping our spending to something smaller. It's such an honor to have you on the show today for such a good update.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks for having me.